We are now down to Module 4. In this particular module, we're going to talk a lot about working with customers and jobs. This is what we call accounts receivable, anything having to do with customers who are people or businesses that buy from you. You have the ability to track those customers in QuickBooks, and also if you have multiple jobs that you do for a particular customer, you can track that as well. And I'm going to show you how to set all of that up here in this first section, working with customers and jobs, part 1. There is a part 2. Make sure you watch both parts before you go on. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and I'll show you how to set up customers. The way I'm going to get to a list of my customers is I'm going to go to what's called the Customer Center. Now, there are a couple different ways I can access the Customer Center. This is the easiest way right here from the home screen. But I did want you to notice that you have an icon that says Customers on your icon bar. And also, if you go to the menu, you can click on the Customer Center that way. Any of these 3 options are going to take you to the same exact place. What you see here is a list of all of your active customers. You'll notice that currently they're alphabetical by last name. QuickBooks is not going to do that automatically for you, but it will sort by the first character that you type in. That means that if you type last name, comma, first name when you're setting them up, they'll all be alphabetical order by last name. Sometimes a customer is a business. That's okay. It's still going to be alphabetical by the first letter in that name for that business. These that look like they're indented like this, those are jobs for that customer. If your business does not use the job feature, that's okay. You don't have to set them up. You'll notice that I can see the balance the customer owes me as a total and also the balance the customer owes per job. This column over here is where you can add an attachment. Let's say you had a Word doc or someone emailed you a particular file that you wanted to attach to this. You saw that I just double-clicked right here and that brought up this attachments window. I can now search my computer. If I'd already saved the file once, I could go grab it that way. I could scan it in right from here, or I could go to the Document Center and pull it in that way. I might also have a file that's in Outlook and I can just drag and drop it here. Maybe it's on my desktop, I drag and drop it, or if there's other folders, I can drag and drop them here as well. All of those are ways that I can actually attach that file. When I'm finished, I'll just hit done and I would see a little paper clip right over here indicating there was an attachment. There's also a paper clip here, and that's the same exact thing. It's just another way to add an attachment to this customer. When I'm clicked on this customer, you'll notice that I can come right up to the top here. It says active customers, and I can pull the list down and look at the list a couple of different ways. I might just want to see the customers that have an open balance right now, maybe anyone with overdue invoices or almost overdue invoices. I can also look at the whole list by going to all customers at the top. Any list in QuickBooks, you have the ability to take items from that list and make them inactive temporarily. That way you won't see them when you're in other areas of QuickBooks and looking at the drop-down list. Let's just say that I wanted to go ahead and make Babcock's Music Shop inactive. If you notice there's an X here and I just click, and that makes it inactive. When I go back now and look at my active customers, you'll notice it's not on the list. If I wanted to make it active again, I just go back and I click the X and it will ask me, do you want to activate the subs as well? I would say yes, and now it's active again. And I'll be able to do that with the chart of accounts or with items, any list in QuickBooks. You'll notice that whichever customer you're clicked on, you're going to see information on the right about that customer. I can see the customer's name, their account number, the terms, their billing address. Notice if I need to see more information up there, I can drag this window down a little bit. I can also see their phone number, and there's a link to their email. This would actually send them an email right from here. It's a live hyperlink. I also have the ability to edit this information and pin a note here if I'd like. I'll show you how to do that here in just a moment. Here's several reports for this customer. These are called quick reports. Even though the first one says quick report, they're all considered quick reports in QuickBooks. There's an open balance report. I can show estimates for this customer and a customer snapshot. Now way back over here, if I wanted to get a map to this particular address or directions, I can do this. This will actually use the Google Maps function. It'll just go online and pull it up automatically for you. The bottom part of the screen has 5 different tabs. The first tab shows all the transactions for that particular customer. You'll notice when you look down the list, there's payments, estimates, invoices, and they're actually sorted in order by date. You can see the little arrow points down next to date right there. That's how I know that. I can choose to sort by number just by clicking the heading there, or go back and sort date again if I want to sort it either ascending or descending. I can also filter this by looking at just invoices if I wanted, or just credit memos. I can use any of these options to create a filter. I can filter by date as well. You'll see over here where it says date, I might look at anything that happened this fiscal year, maybe last fiscal year, but I can also filter by date. The neat thing about working in this is that I can double click on any of these transactions to go to that particular transaction. If I want to see this invoice, I just double click on it and it's going to bring the invoice up. If I wanted to look at it and then close it, I could. I could make a change and close it, whatever I wanted to do with this. I'm going to go ahead and close it. I'll just hit save and close at the bottom of the screen. And now I'm back to my customer center. This is a quick way to access the customer transactions. There's other ways to do it in QuickBooks, but I find this to be the easiest way. At the bottom of this window, it says Manage Transactions, and there's a drop-down arrow. There are several different things you can do from here. You might go ahead and create any of these entries. You'll also notice that at the top of your screen where it says New Transactions, this is the same list. These options are all on the home screen. Chances are you're not going to be here when you want to create invoices, for example. So that option is there if you wanted to use it, but chances are you're not going to use it from this window. The next tab over are your contacts. These are contacts that have to do with this particular customer you have selected. It might be that this is the person in the office that you speak with. It might be one of the owners. All you have to do to add a contact is come to the very bottom. You'll see Manage Contacts. Here you can choose Add New, Edit Selected, or Delete. If I click Add New, you'll notice that you can go in and put in the person's title, their first and last name, and then if you want to put in their work phone, fax, mobile, any of these fields, you'll be able to do that. You can also specify if this is an additional contact, a primary contact, or a secondary contact. And I'm going to cancel this, but you see that you can have a lot of different contacts here related to this particular customer if that's what you need to do. The next tab over are your to-dos. To-dos are things that you have to take care of related to this particular customer and or job. You can see here that a to-do can be a phone call, a fax, an email, a meeting, an appointment, or a task. The way you create a new to-do is you come to the bottom where it says Manage To-Dos and you create a new one. I'm going to go ahead and add one here so you can see what happens when you create a to-do. Here's where you choose what type of to-do this is, and let's say you have to set a meeting. You can choose the priority, is it high, low, or medium? It's going to assume it's with this customer and job, but you could change that if you need to. And there's also a due date that you can set here. If you have a particular time that day, you can also set that here as well. Now all you're going to do at the bottom is type in the details. Set up meeting with Christy about new job. Down here it says the status is active. You'll see if it's already been completed, you can change the status to done or you can make it inactive, but I'm going to leave it on active and click OK. And now you're going to see that that to-do shows up in this list. What's going to happen is once this to-do has been completed, I can double click where it says done, which will bring the edit to-do window up, and I can change this status to say done and then click OK. And now you'll see there's a check mark there indicating that to-do has been done. These to-dos will also show up on the calendar function that we'll talk about in a later module. Notice there's also reports down here. There were for each of these tabs if you want to run some reports on to-dos in this case. The next tab over says Notes. This is where you can keep notes on different conversations you might have with your customer. Maybe you actually do something you want to track a note for, you can do that. And you can go to the Manage Notes at the bottom to add a new note. When you add a note, it's going to be the next one in the list. If there's a particular one you'd like to pin, that means you want to keep it right here so that you can see it every time you click on that customer. You can actually do that by making sure you have the little pin right here. The last tab are your sent emails. It used to be that if you wanted to send emails to this customer, it didn't track those emails. You could send things through QuickBooks, like an invoice, you could email it over, for example, but you had no way to track your sent email, and now you do. You can also go to the bottom and manage your emails here. You can see that if you had some, you could remove different ones if you wanted to, but they will automatically show up there once you actually email those particular transactions. I want to go ahead and stop the video right here. There is a part 2 to this. We've got a few more things we want to look at. I'm going to have you go ahead and go over to the second part, Working with Customers and Jobs, Part 2. We've got a lot more to talk about when it comes to working with customers and jobs. This is Part 2. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks, and we're going to go ahead and add a new customer. The way we're going to add a new customer is we're going to the very top left where it says New Customer and Job. If we click the drop down, we can add a new customer. The first thing I'd ask you is to put in the customer's name. Remember, we're going to stay consistent with how the list is set up, so I'm going to do last name, comma, first name, and this will be Tom Allen. There is a place to put in the opening balance. The way this field is designed is, as of the start date of your company file, how much money did this customer owe you? You could put in that total here and then put in that date. I personally don't like to do that because even though my accounting would be correct, I don't have a way of going back and seeing that that was actually 3 different invoices that I had invoiced my customer for that was for a total of $1,000. I personally like to go back and put each invoice he still owed me for in, and that way I can see everything going on when I look at a report. The next thing is the address info. You're going to be able to put in the company name. If Tom Allen had a company, you could plug that in here. You could also go ahead and put his full name back in these fields here. Now, a very common question is, if I've got his name up here, why do I need to put it back here? One of the things we'll talk about towards the end of all these videos is the fact that you can do mail merges with Microsoft Word. It will actually pull from these fields here, not from here. This is just for this list. So that means you'll want to go ahead and make sure that you have all of the fields filled in with the information you might need if you're ever going to be pulling some of this information. You can see you can put in his job title, phone, fax, email, website, and any of these fields you see here can represent any of these. So you just change it to the one you want it to represent. You'll notice that as you start typing his company name, that it pulls that down here. So you're going to want to go in and edit this information. This is the actual billing information that will pull onto any correspondence you send out. Make sure this information is the way you want it. You can always come back in here and edit this if you need to. If you actually have an instance where you might have a customer say, I want you to send the invoice to one place, but send the physical items to another address over here, you can actually change all of this, but typically you just want this part here. The next tab on the left are your payment settings. A lot of these fields are just informational for you. For example, if you give your customers account numbers, you have a place to plug that in here. You might want to give different customers different repayment terms. You'll see there's net 30 on the list, net 60, net 15, there's due upon receipt. There's also 1 and 2% to net 30. Just to tell you what these mean, Let's just use 2% 10 net 30. This means the customer's invoice will be due in 30 days, but if he pays you in 10 days, he can take 2% off of the total of the invoice. It's a way of getting your customers to pay you a little bit early. Does this customer have a preferred delivery method? Do they like things emailed or mailed to them? Is there a preferred payment method as well? Do they typically pay you with MasterCard or cash? And this doesn't mean that every time they pay you this way, it just means that they usually pay you this way. There is a place to put in your customer's credit card information if they buy from you on a regular basis. That way you don't have to keep asking for that information. I personally would never in a million years put any of this in here. It's just safe for you to save this somewhere else if you need to keep it. A lot of companies still don't keep this information anywhere. They just ask for it again every time the customer makes a purchase. On the right, you can set a credit limit. What would happen is if you tried to invoice your customer for more than they owed and it exceeded the credit limit, it would pop up and just say to you, this customer has exceeded the credit limit. Would you still like to sell them something? And you can also set a price level. A lot of times what happens is if this is a commercial customer, you give them a different price than maybe a residential customer. You can also set up the online payments, and I mentioned this when we were going through the preferences. If you've already set it up with Intuit, then you can actually email this invoice over to the customer, and then when they get it, they can just click a button and pay you with a credit card or bank transfer right from there. Back to the left, the next tab over says Sales Tax Settings. When we talk about sales tax, there's a couple things that come into play, and one of them is when you're actually charging tax, do you charge it to this customer? Yes or no? You might have a customer who's a nonprofit organization where they are tax exempt, whereas another customer might have to pay sales tax. If they do pay sales tax, which sales tax item or group do you charge them? And then if they have a resale number, you can plug that in. Basically what that means is, let's say that I sell chairs in my store and my customer comes to me and buys chairs to put in his store to sell. He could have applied to the state for a resale exemption for sales tax, and if he has that resale number, I can plug it in here just in case I ever need it for some reason. The next tab on the left is additional info. You can track things like the customer type. Notice they're tracking commercial and residential customers. This would be whatever list you wanted to create. You can see you can add new. If you have sales reps in your organization, you can add those. That way you can track which rep works with which customers. And on the right, you'll see a couple of fields that say contract number, birthday, and spouse's name. Now these fields are not here automatically. You add those. What you do is you go down to Define Fields. You type in the name of the field that you want to create and check off if you want to see that field for customers, vendors, and or employees so that you don't have to set it up 3 different times. Then you can actually add information into those fields. The last tab on the left is Job Info. Now in this case we're just setting up a customer, but if we were setting up a job, we could put in information like the description of the job, the type of job, maybe the status of the job, a start date, projected end date, and an actual end date. That's the information you need to set up when you're setting up a customer. I'm going to click OK, and you'll now see your customer in the list. Now you'll notice that it put Tom Allen at the very top of the list, not alphabetical. All I have to do is click the word name at the top of the column there, and that will resort the list. Now let me show you real quick how to add a job for Tom Allen. As long as I'm clicked on Tom Allen, I can go back up here where it says New Customer and Job and add a job. I'm going to call this job Kitchen Remodel. You'll notice that it pulled in all of the information from my customer. Unless I need to change any of that, all I have to do is click OK. And now you'll see there's a job for Tom Allen. I wanted to also mention when you go back to the New Customer and Job option here, you can add multiple customers and jobs. If you actually have some of this information already in Excel and you've got it set up with the same columns that you see here, you can actually copy and paste this information. If you want to set up a new customer job in here, you can go down to the very bottom, type on the last line, and then it will update this for you. And this is just a little time-saving tip that it's giving you, but that's another thing you can do if you want to add a lot of customers and jobs at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And that's a quick way to work with your customers and your jobs. I want to go ahead now and start talking a little bit about working with estimates. We're going to head over to section 2 and we'll be talking about setting up estimates and using these customers and jobs that we just created.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. Now, to get a free QuickBooks Pro 2020 introductory course, click over there. And click over there to watch all the videos in this QuickBooks Pro 2020 playlist.